Hey, and welcome to the Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. We are Josh and Laura, and today we will be discussing toxic monogamy. So grab your English tea or your fat free, sugar free latte and join us as we discuss the complexities between social convention and personal relationships. This is Skeptic Hangout, Toxic Monogamy.
All right.
I can't find the camera. There we go.
All right, so toxic monogamy. This kind of feels like we're going to be trading on some similar ground to what we did when we did polyamory, and where I'm probably going to get confused on some aspects of this, because like when we talked polyamory, I still to this day do not understand like non-sexual polyamory. It does not make any kind of sense to me, or like non-romantic polyamory does not make sense to me. Toxic monogamy, it seems like the only way I've never heard the term before tonight. It seems like the only way toxic monogamy makes any sense is if one person in the relationship doesn't want to be monogamous and is getting forced to by the other person because they don't want to lose them. That's the only way I can see toxic monogamy, because that should be something like polyamory, where you go into a relationship. And I actually had this conversation with a girl that I recently went out on a date with, that I am very much a monogamous person, and I don't see any problems morally with polyamory. It's just not something that suits my personality. I especially I'm introverted, so adding more people into the mix just sounds like a nightmare to
Just
me.
more work.
Yeah, so like I was upfront about that. Neither of us had a problem with polyamory, but we were both very much not for us kind of thing. So toxic monogamy only seems like people didn't have this discussion early on in the relationship, and that's when you should be having this discussion. Other than that, like I toxic monogamy, maybe you'll be able to fill me in on some other aspects that I'm missing right now, because it seems like an odd concept.
Okay, so this is one of those topics that was given to us by Puck, and he gave us a whole list of just like these really interesting random topics. And some of them I'd never even heard of. This is one that I never heard of. And so I had to look it up. So it's not exactly what you think, but I do think that there's a lot of nuance there where we could say that maybe the term is a little bit problematic. So toxic monogamy is the concept that monogamy is taught in culture in such a way that it teaches harmful concepts to the people practicing it, right? And it's taught in a way that presents it as sort of like the only option. Therefore, people feel this pressure to fit into that standard versus choosing that standard because it's what's right for them. And it sounds like to me, someone like you would just naturally choose it and not have an issue with it. Whereas the person you were saying hypothetically earlier, who it's like, well, I'm in a monogamous relationship because I feel like I have to be, but I don't want to be. It's the overall concept that it's what the culture teaches versus what the person chooses. Things like oh, when you love a person, the way that you show your love for them is that you're not attracted to any other person. And that to have those attractions or voice those attractions is a betrayal to the relationship, or a sign that the relationship isn't healthy or that you're not attracted to your partner. So it's concepts like jealousy and stuff. Now, this doesn't touch on, because even in poly worlds, cheating is cheating and lying is lying. So when we're talking in these realms, we got to keep it in the realm of everything being out in the open, all things being said.
You made like a contract socially, not like, I doubt you're signing anything. If you're signing anything, you might be in a toxic monogamy situation, or toxic even polyamory. Probably if you're signing shit over it, you're in a weird situation. I think I kind of get where you're coming from on this, because I it's the people that are like need to check their spouse's phone all the time, that can be like toxic monogamy.
Mm,
If like, because
yeah.
I that's a red flag for me right away if I'm dating somebody and like I've never cheated. Like I said, I'm very much in the monogamous thing. Also, not a whole lot of opportunities for cheating, but I do think I do a little bit better than I do okay on that. But I'm like an average looking guy. Not I don't have women like throwing themselves at me. But uh, if you're worried about monitoring who you're with, who your spouse is with, or who your person you're dating is with, that might be a problem. You have to check through phones. If you're using those phone
Hmm.
apps where tell where the person is at all the time, that could probably count into this toxic monogamy thing. I think one of the biggest offenders I've seen now that you've opened up my eyes to this a little bit is, and this is perpetuated by cultures like on television and everything, is guys and girls can, or guys and women, going back to an episode back, uh can't be just platonic friends. So like that your
Right.
spouse is getting upset if
Right.
you're with just hanging out with somebody. I'll tell some, but I have some friends that I've gone out on dates with, and I'm still friends with them. I have friends that I've at least asked out that I'm still friends with, and nothing ever happened of it. I give that information up front because I don't hide anything. And if that's going to be a
Mhm.
red flag for somebody, it's going to be a red flag for me that they're calling that a red flag. So,
Right. You want to know. Yeah.
yes, I want to know, like, I'd be too jealous to do a polyamorous relationship, but I don't see I give everybody a clean slate. I don't see like if they're talking to a guy that it's automatically, oh, they're going to cheat on me or something like that. So, like, I try to avoid those toxic pitfalls, but like, probably when I was younger, I was definitely maybe toxic monogamy or whatever, if that term still doesn't make sense to me. But going by the definitions that we've been going on, I would get a little bit more jealous than I would now. When now I'm more of if they're gonna cheat on me, I'd rather them happen while I'm giving them all my trust than just act like a paranoid psycho around it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you bring up some good points between the difference between like healthy monogamy and toxic monogamy, in the sense that it's really the contracts and how you handle them. Like what you were saying with, like, if I'm going to be having a friend who's a female, or in my case like a male, and that's socially unacceptable either by the community or your family or your spouse, and most often it ends up being the spouse, right, that we're really talking about. But
Yeah.
that comes from the community. Like that teaching comes from somewhere. They got that somewhere. I think that that's really toxic, because then it really sets up this divide that, like for me, for example, the majority of my friends to this day are male and always have been, and I don't have relationships with them. There's no threat there. And if I had to only have female friends, I think I would really, in fact, I did that during the time that I was Muslim. I only had female friends because I was really trying hard to follow the religion as closely as I could. And I hated it. Like I loved the girls that I got, women that I got to know, but I really felt like I was missing out on a social group that I actually bonded with, because I have a hard time bonding with women. I think the concept of toxic monogamy, I don't want it to be confused, at least when we're talking, with the idea that monogamy therefore is bad,
Well, I do
right?
know I've heard people say that like monogamous relationships are like relationship slavery and stuff like that. I'm like, no, man, it works for you. Like for you, the kind of libido you have, the kind of like extroverted personality that you have, that's when it's going to become sexual slavery. But if you're coming in conversations and like talking like uh and you're not like putting what works for you on an entire fucking world, and you're only putting it onto your fucking spouse that you want to be monogamous, that's fucking fine.
Yeah,
Polyamory isn't for everybody. But
right.
so like everybody's gotta bring their expectations of what works for them. And I think another thing that, going back to toxic monogamy, people gotta give everybody a clean slate, I think, because I think there's this uh society's built up like all women are the same, so you got to treat them exactly the same. That's why we got the pickup
Mm-hmm.
artist culture
Yeah,
kind of thing going on. And I give everybody a clean slate. I've been cheated on before, and
yeah.
I don't bring that baggage onto somebody else. I've had toxic relationships. I don't bring that baggage onto somebody else. Everybody gets a clean slate when I start dating. They get to fuck me over in their own way, in their own unique. Which honestly,
That way everyone's a little different. You don't keep
yeah, some people stab you in the back, some people stab you in the front. You got to give them a
each to
chance to
each their
to
own.
tell you where they're going to stab you. But
Or let it be a surprise.
exactly. exactly. Well, metaphorically, don't like peg
Don't
somebody if
actually
they're not
stab
ready
them.
for it
No.
yet. So like, don't peg them and don't stab them in the ass unless they say they want to get stabbed in the ass. That's another kind of toxicity. But in all honesty, I'm joking about that, but it's probably a cultural negativity thing that I'm perpetuating by even making jokes like that, because I can say there's only one person I've dated that I would never want to talk to ever again. Most of them, it was like kind of like disappointed that it didn't work out, but they're still nice people. So I don't even think like that stereotype that it's just like women are gonna stab you in the back or something like that, or everybody in the ending of a relationship needs to be terrible to each other kind of thing.
Oh yeah, let's run the relationship into the ground before it ends. I do think that okay, so like I said, I'm not the expert on this, but you brought it up and I'm like I want to touch on it. Like I think that that could be an aspect from my perspective of toxic monogamy is that idea that like you will work on your relationship until there's absolutely no relationship left to work on. And like if you're getting a divorce, you're just not working hard enough, you're not conceding enough, you're not compromising enough, you're not communicating enough, all of that could very well be happening and the relationship could just not be good. And so this whole concept of not giving up on the relationship until it's absolutely burned to the ground and both people are destroyed and hate each other, I think really sucks and really screams toxicity to me. I think if like I like the way you say you end your relationships where it's like, hey, sometimes they're not working out, and if we could end it amicably and still be friends or at least still be nice to each other, then that's way, way, way better. And we can both heal and move on versus let's badmouth each other, run each other into the ground. Like this is a person you loved at one point in time. And the
I
way
wouldn't
that
go
that
that far.
love liked a lot. We're talking about like not just monogamous marriages, we're talking about relationships. And I got to remember that. So, yeah, it could be a dating relationship. So, this is a person you cared about at one point in time. And then to take that relationship and erode it to the point that you actually dislike that person, it really shows that culture really values the relationship over the health of the individuals in the relationship. And that I think could be toxic. Like, I don't any of these things that we're talking about, I don't know for sure they actually fall under that umbrella. I know a few things that do that I read about, but it seems to me like that would be one of those things.
No, absolutely. Because I've seen people that and I think it's a lot of times it's for Christian, or not just Christian, religious purposes, that they stay in a relationship
Hmm.
longer than they absolutely should, when they should be seeing other people. Because I've seen people that were seen, both of them became very toxic people just from an outsider's perspective, and then they became better people once they separated out of that relationship. They were
Oh, wow.
so like I guess that's a form of toxic monogamy, is they were torturing themselves to make this relationship work, because the culture says that like you shouldn't be like dating around or all that kind of stuff. You should be sticking with one person once you've found that one person. The people I know, they didn't have like even the Puritan views of like no sex until marriage, or any of that kind of crap. They still like were what I would call like regular people having a regular relationship, but there's still like that, I'd say, a religious hierarchy of like hold
Hmm.
on to the relationship regardless of how you're feeling about it. And or
Yeah.
even sometimes it's just there's discomfort in getting out of a relationship. And I know that I've ended up being the person that's been dumped more times, when I definitely knew ahead of time that I should have ended the relationship. And I kind of,
You
I,
kind of
I
waited
remember, I
too
remember, I
long.
kind of
Yeah.
wrote it, I kind of wrote it out because of like there's comfort in being in a relationship, and that's toxic. And I'm amazed that I only have one person that I would absolutely never want to talk to. The other ones, you start out friendly and then you just become like a Instagram buddies, and you have zero intention of ever seeing them again. But it's like, oh,
But hey, I know
they're alive, and
you.
that's nice.
You were saying they stay in the relationship even though they're not being kind to themselves by staying in the relationship.
Well, they're actually
And
both becoming toxic people to each other.
that, yeah, I was gonna say it happens kind of like both ways, where it's like, I'm gonna stay in the relationship with you, but I'm gonna treat you badly. And it's all that is right. So you said in the beginning something about like monogamy being compared to like slavery, and I really hate that comparison in terms of a broad general. Like I think that that's really disingenuous and
I
inaccurate. But
disagreed with that,
no,
so
you did,
we're on
yeah.
the
But
same
you
page.
brought it up as like a yeah, absolutely, as like something that you had heard, and I definitely disagree with it. But I think that it can get that way when you do have people like that, where it's like hey, honey, like I'm really unhappy with how things, well, I don't give a damn. Like you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And like just start taking it out on each other. And I had a friend I was talking to just yesterday, and he was relaying a conversation that he had with someone, a stranger actually, like they were just chit chatting. And she was just bad mouthing her partner and something he had done. And my friend offered an explanation like, well, it could possibly have been that like this is where he was at the time, or he's not good at expressing himself. He gave like these options. Like, I'm not saying that what he did was right, but here's where people can be when they kind of do those kinds of things. And not only did it go in one ear, not the other, but like the the partner came into the coffee shop later, and the woman turns to the partner and just starts bad mouthing him to his face
Oh
and
wow.
saying like, are you going to apologize to me or what? And like my friend kind of took his leave. He's like, gotta go, bye. Right, like I don't want to be in the middle of this. And good for him too for getting out of that situation as quickly as possible. But that to me sounded so toxic, that you would hold someone into a relationship, resent them, and then spend that relationship tearing them down and making demands of them. That is where I think that whole concept of tying it into slavery, real, and I don't mean like literal chattel
Yeah.
slavery, but like the I control you and I'm in charge of you kind of idea really comes in. It's kind of scary.
Well, I think that was a cultural thing for the longest amount of times. Like I admittedly, I know this show is problematic, but it also was part of my upbringing as a kid, and Kelly Bundy was a thing for me. Married with Children
Right.
definitely shows that toxic monogamy thing, and that they both seem to hate each other 99% of the time, and then they'll have like one little moment where they're nice to each other, and that's actually something that real couples can do. They're not as witty
Hmm.
as they are in Married with Children, and
Right.
they
It's
don't
not
usually.
funny to watch, it's disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of thing does happen where like
Hmm.
they'll latch on to like a really good moment, and they'll like that's why they're in this relationship, because they're either gonna latch onto a good moment that happened recently, or maybe like how things were when they first started, because I don't think anybody comes in despising the person that they're with, but you can get to that point and just like remember, like, and you just, when you're away from them, you're remembering the good parts and ignoring all the things that should be like ending that relationship. If you're in a marriage,
Right.
like I know people that say like a strong marriage has all those problems, but you work through them, kind of thing, and that's probably true to a point, because I don't think anybody can be with anybody for every single day or in a long-term relationship. Admittedly, my longest relationship has been about 6 months. They can be with somebody every single day and not get sick of them a little bit, or like need some space. You gotta give. Even if you love the person, you're probably gonna be like, I need some fucking space. I need a break. And I think that the couples
Sure.
that give themselves that break are the ones that I see that stay stronger with each other. So like, even just being around somebody all the fucking time can like build up resentment, I would think. And this is so like, this idea that you're never going to fight is stupid, but this idea that, but there's going to be got to be a point where there's more bad times than there's good times, and if you're still sticking into it because you're remembering those good times and it's almost all bad times, you got to start questioning whether it's right for you anymore. Because even if you
Yeah.
started out good together, nobody is who they were 10 years ago. Everybody changes.
Hmm.
So like, you may have been like perfect compatible back then, and then 10 years later you're a complete incompatible mess, and like, enjoy the time you had, but don't take a sinking ship and make yourselves both miserable because you got to hold on to this monogamous relationship.
Right. And that doesn't always mean ending the relationship, although it might. So you can have a relationship that's going toxic and still turn it around, in my opinion. And now I know we're talking about two different forms of toxic monogamy. One is the what it teaches and what it presents is like this is what a relationship should be. I think that is validly toxic. And there's also the things that we do within a relationship that's toxic. And I think that that's kind of what you're getting into now, is more of those like these behaviors are toxic. And I think that when you talk about more negative than positive experiences, there's like these weird two schools of thoughts. It's like, oh, you're in, this one is predominantly religious, the you have to stick with it no matter what. And oh, we'll teach you some communication skills and we'll teach you this and we'll teach you that. But a lot of even the teaching can be really toxic. Things like well, this is just how relationships are, or you just need to make these concessions, or you just need to understand this is how the person is. Those kinds of things are really toxic. But then I also think that just the bailing out and leaving without putting any sort of effort into it can at least be disingenuous, and it can be at least unfortunate. Like, I think it's probably the better of the two. Like, worst case scenario, just get out of the relationship, figure out what you did wrong, and do better next time. But there is this sort of happy medium of both people being invested in working on it and communicating and trying to make it better first. And then if it ends up ending, great. But you could also end the cycle that's negative and then keep it going. And that takes a lot of courage and communication and work and determination. Um, but I think it's a little bit misconstrued when it's put into those terms of, like, it has to be in its proper context of relationships aren't supposed to be shitty and there's things you can do about it, not you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think I probably explained myself poorly because everything you're saying sounds about right, but you got to be also willing to acknowledge whether you're willing to put in that effort. Because for
No,
some
for
people,
sure.
just getting the fuck out of it without like doing counseling or something like that is probably the least toxic option that they can do.
For
For some
sure.
people, it really depends on how much they care anymore. And for some people, it's just going to be they're going to
Yeah.
be completely apathetic after a point, and they're like,
Oh, for
if
sure.
one person's trying, and then they might stay in that relationship because they know the other person's trying, but they secretly just want the fuck out and don't know how to end it. Because
Yeah, I hate that.
I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of times marriages solidify that problem. And not that I'm totally against marriage. I'm not like totally for marriage. I'm kind of like
It has its purpose.
I'm
Yeah.
agnostic about marriage, whether or not it's a good thing.
It could be a
But
whole nother episode, honestly.
yeah, so like, but I do think it makes it harder for people to leave, and sometimes they needed to leave a long time ago for what's right for them. Sometimes if they both are clinging on to those good memories hard enough and want to fix it, then it makes sense for them to try and fix it. But you can't do it just because the other person wants it and you're like, don't give a fuck anymore.
No, for sure. And when you said that thing in the beginning about like the sometimes for some people the getting the fuck out of there right off the bat is the least toxic thing they can do. I don't want to be in a relationship and force someone into therapy and force someone to quote unquote get better if their strong desire is to just jump ship and not put the work in, and they feel like that's the best least toxic option. That is the kindest thing you can do, not only to yourself but to them, is to let them go, right? A lot of
Exactly.
times people are forced into like, I don't think this relationship's healthy, I don't want to work on it, I think we should just end. And then it's like, no, we're going to do counseling or therapy or whatever. And I do agree that those things are good, healthy things when both people want them.
Yes.
But forcing someone, I would not want to be in a relationship with anybody that I am forcing to do anything. If they're a slob and I want to be neat and they're not willing to clean up, I need to either clean up because I have that value and they don't, or I need to find someone who's not a slob. I don't force someone to be something that they're not and then try to fit them into my paradigm.
I do think like there are like your example there are ways of compromise that don't leave somebody bitter. Like
Yeah.
if you express like you like a clean house and they try and put in the effort and they're just not up to your standards exactly, but
Right.
you can see the effort is there. I'd say like that's a wash. But
Yeah.
and you do try to adjust a little bit within what you're comfortable with
Like
to with the
expectations
person
wise.
with the person that you like. So I'm
Hmm.
not like I don't think people should totally take away the idea of their partner changing a little bit, but don't expect a total rehaul of who they are, because then why the fuck are you there? And that's how you get into those toxic relationships or toxic monogamy.
Yeah.
I feel like we're more turned into toxic relationship than toxic monogamy, but we are talking about monogamous relationships because I I need to put a little bit more thought into figuring out all the rules to go around a toxic polyamorous relationship. I'm sure they exist, but
Oh, yeah, certainly.
it's more outside of my knowledge and it'd be pure speculation. So we are still talking toxic monogamy. We've just gone more onto just toxic relationship side of that.
And it's okay because a lot of times some of the concepts do translate from relationship type to relationship type. Some of the toxic monogamy things aren't as present, and some just by nature can't be present in poly relationships unless they're dysfunctional. Like healthy poly relationships will sometimes have just different problems. They're it's different
Exactly.
things. When you're talking about toxic polyamory, I can think off the top of my head of different ways that can be defined, or different things that could fall under that category. So certainly, if we're talking about toxic monogamy, it wouldn't be bad to follow up with an episode on toxic polyamory and look at both sides, right? And really be fair about it. But
I only want to stick to one topic though.
for tonight, yeah. And to say
No,
that
no, I was
like,
making a joke because I wanted to only do a monogamous
see,
topic.
this is the neurodivergent side of me that's like, I didn't get it. But okay, so if we go back to just toxic monogamy as like a concept of how monogamy is taught, and you were saying some of the concepts like you're not quite aware of them. One that we could delve into is the idea that that love means something specific, right? And that love kind of trumps overall like and you were talking about incompatibilities and like not being able to get along or having like growing apart from each other, this concept that like, well, that doesn't matter, love trumps all of that.
Yeah,
That is
that's a
one of
dumb
the things I
idea.
read about. Oh yeah, I agree, so let's talk about it.
Oh, like love is completely irrational and it goes beyond what your actual needs are. People do
Mm-hmm.
the dumbest things for love. There's a reason why people. I think the main reason why people stick in the toxic relationships as long as they do is because at one point there may have been some kind of love there, and like I said, you can start out completely compatible and turn into incompatible people, and you're just hoping that love's gonna carry you through that, and it doesn't. Like sometimes it can you can love somebody and just like a job opportunity around that is incompatible with your living situations, and like you can have
Mm-hmm.
all the fucking love in the world and still won't work out, or maybe they'll have like some resentment to you because they gave up on a dream because they wanted to stick with the person that they're with who was in a certain location and couldn't move. Like that's a toxic. I do think that's a toxic thing. Like if you're giving up on your dreams because of a relationship,
Yeah.
that's going to turn toxic, or there's going to be some kind of resentment, because I don't believe in I hope nobody I'm dating reads too much into this. I don't think there's anything like a soulmate that exists. So
Oh, I
like
agree.
you can be extremely compatible with somebody in California. You'll probably find somebody just as compatible in New York or wherever the fuck the job opportunity would go to, or whatever kind of opportunity that is makes you need to move. Uh, you would find in another location. So like it would suck. You can still absolutely love the person, but just like circumstances of the life don't line up right then.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I totally agree. Like there's this concept that love is like we do have the concept of other loves. I love my children, I love my family, I love my friends, I love my dog, like I love popcorn or whatever. Like we do have these other concepts of love, but when it comes to like sort of person to person romantic
If you're getting into bones
connected
though and it gets
love,
complicated.
yeah, so suddenly there's only like we this I think this absolutely applies to what they're talking about with toxic monogamy in the sense that not just that love conquers all, but it's that love trumps all and it's only this one specific kind of love. And so if you so this is where sort of, and I don't want to get too much into poly being better because I can see this happening with poly couples too, where it's like, oh, I want to move to New York for my career, and the nested partner is like, well, I want to stay here with my career in California or whatever. I can see that still being an issue. So this is not a mono poly problem per se, but there is this overall concept in poly that love can change forms and still be totally valid and legitimate. And I'm not saying that means there's no pain when those transitions happen, but the idea that like I can be with a spouse and love them dearly, but when a paradigm shift happens to where we're incompatible or I want to do something and they're preventing me from it and there's this like something you cannot overcome or one person would be unhappy if it overcame, to change the dynamics of that love without losing it, right? That is something that you could have entirely in a monogamous relationship where it's you're only with one person at a time. This one person that you're with is going to move to New York. You're going to love and honor that person by allowing them to go, like, hey, go date, find someone else. I love you and I'm going to keep in touch with you. And even if we fade away from each other, like, just know that there's no bad blood there. And I love you enough to let you be free and chase your dreams. And then you go on and be in another healthy relationship with someone else later. I still think that's way, way healthier than teaching that this overall concept that if you love a person, it means locking
Forever.
them down. Yeah, it means you two now only make compromises for each other, and they might have to compromise by moving, or you might have to compromise by staying. But that's like the only option, right? Otherwise, you hate each other and break up, and it's horrible. I just to see love transition to accommodate people I think is really, really like a beautiful concept that we really undervalue in terms of monogamous relationships.
And again, it is on personal values, because it may be that the person is more important than whatever the opportunity is
Oh, for
to the person.
sure.
Because some
Yeah.
people are more relationship focused, some people are more like career and aspiration
Mhm.
focused. So it's gonna be into the individual. So if you're like in that situation, you're listening to us like, oh, I got a job opportunity, I gotta leave the person that I love because of this
No.
job opportunity. Make it on a case by case basis. But
Yeah.
if you're gonna resent the person, maybe put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, it's more like there's a decision and a choice to be made. And that you, no matter what kind of a relationship you're in, and no matter what the scenario is, you're gonna have multiple times, often, I would say, where you have to choose one thing over another, and it's a value choice, right? Like, do I want this more or do I want that more? And it could even be as simple as food. Like, do I want the cake more or do I want my physique more? Like, there's a point where you have to make the decision. Does Josh want his beer more or does he want like a ripped bod? Like,
Uh,
so it's not just about like, do I choose the spouse or do I choose the career? Clearly, he chooses the beer, by the way. Don't even worry, people. But a lot of times there's other choices we make that are just the same. And so I think encouraging people to learn how to make those choices more freely and more empowered, I think is the way to put it, instead of putting pressure on one spouse or the other.
and just not having letting society pressure you into what they think
That's
is right, or not letting,
yeah.
because I know some people's parents, even as adults,
Right.
some people's parents may be like, oh, you gotta stick around because you love this person in there, or maybe they have some kind of expectation of grandkids if you haven't had grandkids yet, and they're like, you're gonna end this for a career when you haven't pumped out any babies yet.
Oh
So
fuck
like,
yeah.
you gotta go by what you're saying and ignore all pressures, especially if your parents are pressuring you over kids. Tell them to fuck off. That
Oh
is the
yeah.
official standpoint of Skeptic Hangout. Unless you're ready, tell them to fuck off. But yeah, you gotta like go from where you're at and not let society, which definitely we are pushed an image of how families are supposed to be or how couples are supposed to be on television. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
books we read, I'd say like the fact that polyamory is barely becoming like a thing that's even okay in the culture seems like it's maybe only been in the past 5 years. The idea of having well, women, you barely had any rights now. Now that women,
Right.
now that women aren't property that you can pack away in a luggage, there are more considerations that people need to be making about relationships.
Like one thing that really, really gets me about when you just in terms of toxic, I always want to say toxic. I'm getting caught up because I always want to say toxic masculinity, and I have
Because
to
you're
remind
seeing
myself
it.
it's left and right. Yeah, every time we talk. No, that's okay. I'm a toxic feminist. It's all good. But no, when it comes to toxic monogamy, one thing that I think is just really, really important to touch on before we get too close to the end of the show is the concept of jealousy. And first of all, like my first disclaimer would be like, just because you're poly doesn't mean you don't experience jealousy. So that's, I really want to drive that home. Like jealousy is something that's kind of a human thing, and it happens in and out of relationships and for multiple reasons, and can certainly happen within a polyamorous relationship. However, there's this sort of concept in monogamy that I want to discuss with you or get your take on, that if you're in a monogamous relationship, you don't look at other people, you're not attracted to other people, you don't talk about other people. And I have my own issues with this, but I want to get your thoughts. Like, I think that jealousy is normal. I'm not saying that jealousy equals toxic monogamy. I'm saying that when you're taught that a monogamous relationship expects jealousy, or that you're encouraged to feel that jealousy by either the culture or the rhetoric, that if your spouse so much as thinks about or looks at another person, that is something that arouses negative feelings in you or even feelings of insecurity. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you're worried about your spouse looking at other people, you're being way too fucking like you're being toxic right there.
Toxic, yeah.
I really don't see a problem with looking. I've had some friends that completely disagree with me on that. Like they vented to me about like the spouse they look like happening to check out some woman's breast. I'm like, yeah, eyes are gonna wander. As long as you're not touching and as long as you're not being too big of a creep about it, like we're all creeps a little bit, but as long as you're not being too big of a creep about it, and as long as like the person that you're looking at doesn't get creeped out by it, I see no problem with looking. I know some people like they won't even let their spouse watch porn. I'm like, no, let people watch other people fuck. As long as they're not, as long as it's on a television or something like that, who the fuck cares? Like, well, but then again, I like if you go onto my Instagram feed, it's like all types of different women. I like looking at a variety, even if I don't want to be with a variety at the same time.
Right.
So like,
Right.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I've had I do find I do the only time I could say I ever got bad feelings about a woman look that I was seeing looking at other guys is when their taste was kind of weird and like you're dating me and you think Jason Alexander is sexy. This is
Well, to each their own, you guys. But that's
no,
not
no, no.
jealousy. That's
It's
more like
perfectly, it's perfect.
judgment.
No, no, no. Because of like, if that's what she finds sexy, and she says I'm sexy,
Boy,
am I
oh
Jason Alexander?
no. That see that even I think is silly. I wouldn't I would never call that toxic unless depending on how you would
I
respond to it.
I
But I would say that's a bit
sarcastically got a little upset, and like in my head, it was like I got a little bit in my head. I'm gonna admit, I got a little bit in my head about that. I'm like, I mean, I'm a fan of Jason Alexander. I like Seinfeld, but I don't want to be like in the same grouping as Jason Alexander.
so I personally my personal tastes I don't find him attractive, but it's interesting that you say that because I have a huge range of attraction where some of the people I'm attracted to, I like very masculine in a certain way. I love androgynous or feminine masculine, like men who present way more feminine. Um, I like multiple different kinds of women, different skin colors, different hair designs, different hair colors. I don't really have a standard type. And in terms of like body size, I could even go slightly larger and maybe a little bit skinnier. I don't like really super skinny. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is like based on my own experience with attraction and knowing what a range I have, it's weird to hear you compare, oh, because she's attracted to this, I fall into that category because it's like I'm attracted to Idris Elba. My husband is not black, right?
Well,
He does not fall into that
it's
category.
I'm gonna sound like a like an apologist, but it was more like the cumulative taste, and like every single person
Okay.
that she liked was kind of funky
Oh,
looking.
like
So
kind of look
like
like Jason Alexander.
if she just said like Jason Alexander and then she said Idris Elba, I'm like I'm somewhere in the range between Jason
I'm
Alexander
between
and
the two
Idris
of them.
Elba. There's somewhere in between there. I'm
I
there.
exist on that spectrum.
But no,
Okay.
they were all dorky, kind of frumpy looking people. And then she was dating me, so I'm like, oh, getting in my head.
She's
But
just like,
but that's I think that's the closest I've gotten to being like to any kind of toxicity with a girl that I was seeing looking at other
sounds more
guys.
like
It was mostly
insecurity than jealousy, though.
yeah, I guess that would
I'm
be
trying to give you a
insecure,
free
but
pass. Just take it.
that's
Just take it.
still toxicity. But I played it off more jokey, but I did definitely get in my head about it.
Well, that's a good question. Then, like, just having a negative response to something or having something that you need to deal with, whether it's an insecurity or a jealousy or like a trigger or something, is that necessarily automatically toxic, though? Because we all have our negative tidbits here and there. But when you talk about toxic, to me, what toxic means is that it really undermines the relationship or does damage. And some of these things with toxic monogamy really do damage to people. Doesn't
You're
sound like
right.
yours
I
did.
would say it's more of a negative. It's not a positive reaction. It's still not something that's a
Right.
good way to react, but you can't really do like thought police and or emotion control kind of thing. And like I'm also very aware when I'm being irrational. So like I have like security checks in my head of like that's a stupid thought. Don't act on that. And I'm usually like I'm because like honestly, despite the fact that everybody thinks I come off like somebody with no emotions, I'm just really good at like capturing when I'm being stupid. And there's so many stupid thoughts that come out of his head, and only a few stupid thoughts flutter out of the mouth. So like, uh, there is a catch on it where it's not toxic, but it's definitely like it's like uh in Princess Bride where he was eating like a little bit of poison to get immune to it.
Ah,
I
yeah, yeah,
had like
yeah. It
there was a like
builds.
a little bit of poison there, but I
Yeah.
eventually was getting immune to my stupidity. I guess. Well, I still
I
have a
really
lot
think
of it.
it's I think it's good at least though in any kind of relationship, mono, poly, or otherwise, to just be able to admit faults and recognize them. That could even be a whole nother conversation of toxic relationships is the people who don't or aren't able to deal with their own faults or recognize when they have an issue that needs to be dealt with. So when you talk about jealousy in terms of toxic relationships, I know it strays away from monogamy because I really want to be clear that can happen in poly relationships too. But when you, let's say you have like an overly jealous guy, but he actually mistreats his partner as a result of it, and maybe there's breakups and partners leave him and he gets a new partner, but it's kind of like an ongoing thing. There's a point where when you're not willing to deal with your own shit, that becomes toxic, right? So there really is something to be said for just the ability to say like, yeah, I recognize that was a me problem and that was not okay.
Well, I think everybody needs some self reflection because everybody's gonna have stupid fucking thoughts. The whether or not you're being toxic is if you act upon those thoughts, and some people they don't do any kind of they don't put any safeguards in their head to
Right.
stop those kinds of thoughts. And I'll admit, like younger me, this is even just going straying a little bit away from like the relationship thing. I definitely had like the kind of thoughts in my head, or even expressed a lot of thoughts to my friends, which I'm amazed I have some of my friends that I still have that were very toxic. Like I'm one of those guys that had the thought in my head, like, I paid for the date. If I paid for the date, at the very least, you should have to kiss me at the end of the date. And like
Expectations.
that is cringe. Like that's where my that's where a lot of my toxicity went, where I if I like that kind of idea, there are such things as sex workers that exist who go transactional like that. But
Yeah.
nobody, just
And
because
even
you
then
paid
there's a
for,
modicum of respect that could be
yeah,
denied. Like you still need to give that person respect, but
yeah. But if you're,
yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm treating it like a transactional thing.
Right.
Like
And there's
I'm
people who
paying
do
for
that
that.
professionally. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So like that's where my toxicity went more when I was younger. I was kind of I think I had some red pill ideas, but self reflection I think has taken me outside of that.
That's really good. Yeah. In terms of actual toxic monogamy as a because we bounce back and forth a lot, and this is totally cool between people who are toxic in monogamous relationships or just relationships, and then this concept of toxic monogamy. So I did want to bring it back one more time to one more point that I found fascinating when I was looking into it, and that is the idea that does not exist within all monogamous relationships. So we are talking toxic, and so I want to make sure that is like highlighted not just for you but for the audience as they're hearing my question is when you say that your spouse is supposed to be able to take care of all your needs and wants and stuff like that, because there's this idea that like, well, we do everything together, we fulfill each other's needs, we do this, we do that, and there's this really big push in poly communities with the whole like no one person can be any person's everybody or everything, right? But even in monogamous relationships where there's not a second partner, a spouse can't be everybody's everything, but most of those little holes that can't be filled can be filled with like friends and community and family. And yet I do still see this concept that and it was in the article that I read about toxic monogamy, that the one that you're married to, your life partner, your soulmate, all that kind of stuff, they fulfill you. They take care of you. They like they complete you, right? And so there's like this sense that one person can be your everything.
I don't believe in that concept either.
Well, you're
Uh,
not as toxic as this.
well, like the idea that anybody can be your everything is ridiculous. You
Yeah.
do just need to find a partner that fits enough of what you need. Where like if there's like a couple things missing that you'd like, but it's not a deal breaker for you,
Mhm.
that's perfectly fine. There's some weird kinks I enjoy that pretty much no woman I've dated has been into, and it's never been a deal breaker. It's always been like it'd be cool if she was into this, but it wasn't like, oh, she doesn't want this. I'm gonna end it right there. So you just got to get somebody that I'm saying this is somebody that's not in the longest of term relationships. So take that with a spoon of salt, whatever I'm saying, or spoon of sugar is
Like a
probably
bucket
better
of
for you.
salt.
Yeah. But if as long as you can get happy with most of it, and like you said, some of it was with friends. The kink thing is definitely not something, because I'm monogamous, that I can get with other friends. But
Right.
it's never a deal breaker. It's always been like, this would be cool, but not a big fucking deal. So like you got to find where you're able to do compromise that doesn't like make you sad or make you depressed or make you miserable in the relationship, and hoping that maybe they'll overcome it. If you're hoping that they'll overcome something that to you is fucking important, they may not be the person for you. If you're going into a monogamous relationship and trying to hoist that upon them, is where you're going to get toxic. Because I don't think there's ever going to be somebody that fits like a Lego with you, but I do think there's going to be some people that, like, if you jam that Lego hard enough, it fits well enough.
No, I think when you talk about sexual compatibility, that I think is a very, very different topic than just like having your general needs met. Because like, and I want to kind of talk about both of them really quickly, but there are some sexual incompatibilities that I really think people should be empowered to not be in those relationships. Again, shift your concept of what love means. I love this person. I want them in my life. They're going to be a dear friend of mine. They're going to be someone who I commune with, but my sexual relationship is going to be with this person over here because they are more compatible with me. There's compatibility levels, right? But you mentioned, oh, I have a couple of kinks, but I enjoy all these other things that they want to do. And I enjoy sex and I'm fulfilled and I'm not left wanting or left depressed or feeling like I'm missing out on
Yeah,
something. That is for every person to determine, like, what are my have to haves versus my, dude, that'd be a bonus if I got it. And it's the have to
exactly.
haves, yeah, that establish compatibility. And I think people are way too reluctant to change or leave those relationships because of that sexual incompatibility, and it creates a lot of dysfunction in that relationship, or it leaves one person just totally not satisfied and unhappy and they just cope or deal. And I think that that is a level of toxicity that the when you cram the overall concept of monogamy down people's throats as this monolith thing without any nuance, that ends up happening more often than not, where it's not about your sexual compatibility, it's how well you learn to compromise and work with it and deal with it. And it's like,
And
well,
whether the
fuck
compromise
that.
is worth it.
Right. Like there are times like if I like five different kinds of sex and my partner only likes two or three of them, bam, we're good because we can both be satisfied by those. And the other ones aren't necessarily like, I have to have this or I'm not going to be happy. But if I was forced to have a sexual relationship that was other than something that was satisfying to me, it would be damn near like torture or slavery. Like it would be not something that I could see myself being in a long-term relationship with. But you talked about like the friendship things and everything, and I think that's really important. Like as a real life example, my husband doesn't talk as much. He's not as into like deep, really like in-depth conversations, unless it's something very specific that he's interested in. And so he and I don't share a lot of these like really long, in-depth conversations that I really need. Well, I get them from my brother, from my stepdad, from friends. Like that's never been an issue where I'm like, well, because of this issue, I need to go outside of the relationship to form a romantic relationship because I can get that specific need met somewhere else. And I think that that should be something that, in terms of healthy monogamy, that should definitely be something that's encouraged, is like, how much can you accomplish outside of the relationship and have other strong relationships? Because that's really important.
Yeah, because I don't think, and I think we're getting to the point where we got to start wrapping up. But I do think
Yes,
that
we
the
are.
idea that one person represents all that you fucking need is a stupid,
Mhm.
idealized, uh, fantasy Disney kind of idea that is pointless.
I like it. I actually think we could just end on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have anything to say about this, I know it's kind of a confusing topic, especially bouncing between what's being taught as like, are there damaging concepts being sort of taught to people that then brings dysfunction into monogamous relationships, or is it people themselves that bring toxic traits into relationships, and how it overlaps with poly too. I think it's really, really good to never lose sight of the fact that just because you're being critical of one aspect of one thing, that it doesn't exist anywhere else. So that I think is something really important. So you guys out there, if there's anything you have in terms of a story or experience or positions, jump over to our Facebook page and let us know your thoughts and share your experiences. Before we let you go, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. You can check out all of our links on Linktree. And yeah, let's get connected on this and see where this goes with everybody. I can't remember what the ending is. Stay skeptical.
Well, eventually we will. Remember to keep questioning, interrogate your
Interrogate your
beliefs.
beliefs.
and stay skeptical.
Bye. This is Skeptic Hangout. Toxic masculinity.
Monogamy.
Oh my god. I actually wrote masculinity. Oh, I like read that verbatim. Didn't even think about it.